Last week, the United States Federal Reserve finally released its initial plans for a central bank digital currency. The highly anticipated paper is packed with proposals that could have serious implications for cryptocurrency, should they come to pass. Today, I'm going to briefly explain what central bank digital currencies are, break down the Federal Reserve CBDC paper, and tell you what a digital dollar could mean for the crypto market. Before I talk about the Fed, there's something that needs to be said. If you came here looking for financial advice, you won't find a shred. That's because entertainment and education are the only things I spread. Please contact a financial advisor if you need help getting that bread. If this is the first time we cross paths, my name is Guy and fiat currency makes me mad. That's why I create quality crypto content to prove to the world that crypto is more than a fad. Coins, tokens, news, reviews, and other topics that will turn you into a crypto Chad. If this sounds rad, subscribing to the channel and pinging that notification bell is a good plan. I've left timestamps below that you can use to skip around if you're in a hurry. It's best if you watch until the end, but if you can't, then no worries. Now, I know my rhymes are baller, but it's about time we examined the digital dollar. To fully understand the effects a digital dollar could have on the crypto market, you need to know a few things about central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. For starters, CBDCs are not cryptocurrencies. In fact, they couldn't be more different. This is because CBDCs are centralized, permissioned, private, and closed source. In plain English, CBDCs are controlled by the central bank. You must provide detailed personal information to use a CBDC. Only you and the central bank can see your transactions, and only the central bank knows how its CBDC works. By contrast, cryptocurrencies are decentralized, permissionless, public, and open source. In plain English, cryptocurrencies are not controlled by anyone. You don't have to provide any personal information to use a cryptocurrency. All transactions can be viewed by anyone in real time, and anyone can check to see how a cryptocurrency works via its code. Whereas cryptocurrencies are designed from the ground up to maximize freedom, CBDCs are designed from the ground up to maximize control, making it possible for central banks to do things like block transactions, freeze accounts, alter account balances, and even put limits on account holdings. If this sounds like a conspiracy, you must have missed my video about a CBDC report by the Bank for International Settlements, which explicitly states that CBDCs will have these qualities. That'll be in the description for you to watch later. Now, despite the dystopian qualities of these CBDCs, almost every central bank in the world is looking to develop their own, and a few countries have already released theirs, namely the Bahamas and Nigeria. This is mainly because central banks want to have more control over their monetary policy. Right now, central banks can only create money, and this has caused a lot of inflation. CBDCs will make it possible for central banks to destroy money, and this will help keep inflation under control at the expense of the average citizen's financial privacy and financial autonomy. Many countries are also using CBDCs as a means of protecting their national currencies from the monetary policies of other countries, namely the United States, whose dollar is currently the world's reserve currency. The Federal Reserve is the central bank of the United States, and it has been under extreme pressure from politicians to develop a digital dollar to ensure that the USD doesn't lose that status to a currency issued by another country or company, or even a cryptocurrency like BTC. This pressure began back in 2019 when Facebook, now Meta, revealed its Libra currency and has only increased as cryptocurrency adoption continues. Note that Libra is not a cryptocurrency. It's essentially a corporate CBDC. After almost 2 years of sidestepping CBDCs, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell announced in May 2021 that the Federal Reserve would be releasing a report detailing the pros and cons of a digital dollar. Jerome was pressed about this report during his recent nomination hearing, and the report was duly released last week. As always, I'll give you my thoughts as we go along, and if you're curious about what happened at Jerome's nomination hearing, you can find out using the link in the description. The Federal Reserve's CBDC report is titled, quote, Money and Payments, the US Dollar in the Age of Digital Transformation, and it was written by the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. For context, the Fed Board of Governors currently consists of 4 people, including Chairman Jerome Powell. Jerome and 2 of the other board members have historically been skeptical of a CBDC, though this aggregate opinion may change once the remaining 3 seats on the 7-seat board are filled. More on that later. The report begins with a short summary and introduction, and there are a few things that stuck out to me there. First, quote, this paper is the first step in a public discussion between the Federal Reserve and stakeholders about central bank digital currencies. If you've watched any of my videos about the World Economic Forum, you'll know that the term stakeholder is often used in reference to corporations and governments, not the average person. To be fair, it's not entirely clear if stakeholder is being used in this context during the report, and it's worth pointing out that the Fed has invited US citizens to submit feedback about a possible CBDC on its website. The second thing that stuck out to me was the very next sentence, which reads, quote, for the purpose of this paper, a CBDC is defined as a digital liability of a central bank that is widely available to the general public. If you've watched any of my recent videos about CBDCs, you'll know that there are 2 kinds of CBDC. A retail CBDC, which will be used by regular people, and a wholesale CBDC, which will be used by select individuals and institutions. As such, this second sentence specifies that everything the Fed says in the report is relevant only to retail CBDCs, so keep that in mind as we go along. The authors then go on to detail the 6 criteria that a digital dollar must meet. First, it must provide a benefit to the economy that outweighs the risks. Second, it must provide that benefit more effectively than any alternative methods. Third, it must complement rather than replace existing money. Fourth, it must protect consumer privacy. Fifth, it must protect against criminal activity. And sixth, it must have broad support from, quote, key stakeholders. Now, besides that 6th criterion, it's the 2nd criterion that caught my eye, and that's because it's clear that cryptocurrency stablecoins are one of these alternative methods that are more effective than a digital dollar. As it so happens, the World Economic Forum's recent crypto report details a so-called synthetic CBDC, which would consist of stablecoins being leveraged by central banks. More about that in the description. Anyways, the last part of the introduction that caught my eye was, quote, the Federal Reserve does not intend to proceed with issuance of a CBDC without clear support from the executive branch and from Congress, ideally in the form of a specific authorizing law. Put simply, it's up to the politicians as to whether a digital dollar sees the light of day. The first part of the report provides a brief breakdown of the existing forms of money in the US financial system. These are central bank money, i.e. money that commercial banks have at the Fed. Commercial bank money, i.e. money that consumers have with the commercial banks. And non-bank money, i.e. money that consumers have with non-bank entities like PayPal. The authors explain that each kind of money comes with its own risks and benefits, and that central bank money is the safest form of money due to the regulations and insurance associated with it. I would argue that it's the highest risk form of money because of the extreme centralization associated with it, but let's not go there. The second part of the report provides a similarly brief breakdown of the payment system in the United States, and a few things stuck out to me here. First, quote, systemically important payment firms are subject to heightened supervision and regulation. If you watch my video about the stablecoin report by the President's Working Group on Financial Markets, aka the Plunge Protection Team, you might recall that the PWG said they might label stablecoin issuers as systemically important payment firms. This would bring stablecoin issuers under the wing of the Federal Reserve and could foreshadow a synthetic CBDC. Another thing that stuck out to me in this section is that the Federal Reserve will be releasing a new payment system called FedNow in 2023, which will allow people to move money 24/7 the same way you can with cryptocurrency and many mobile payment apps. Speaking of which, the Federal Reserve specifies that non-bank payment services, such as these mobile payment apps, could pose a threat to the current financial system. Luckily, the Fed doesn't see cryptocurrencies as a risk to financial stability, at least not Jerome Powell, though I will point out that this is not mentioned in the report. The authors then drop a crazy statistic I've mentioned before, and that's that 5% of the US population is unbanked, and another 20% rely primarily on other financial instruments and services, such as checks and mobile payment apps. The authors also explain that there are serious shortcomings in the realm of cross-border payments, such as remittances, whose middlemen take an average cut of around 5.5% from every transaction. Daylight robbery. The third part of the report dives into digital assets, which of course includes cryptocurrencies. The authors start by effectively dismissing the entirety of the crypto industry due to its drawbacks, specifically the absence of individuals and institutions who accept crypto as payment, the persistent price volatility, the quote, significant energy footprint of Bitcoin, and of course, scams and hacks. Not surprisingly, the only exception to their crypto critique is dollar-backed stablecoins, which the authors confirm, quote, could potentially support faster, more efficient, and more inclusive payment options. However, the authors also note that there are a lot of risks associated with stablecoins, such as bank runs. This is where everyone goes to exchange their stablecoins for fiat at the same time, only to find that the issuer doesn't have the fiat. This is a very real risk because most of the dollar-denominated stablecoins in circulation are not backed by dollars, but by government debt and corporate debt. More about that in the description. Anyhow, the fourth part of the report concerns central bank digital currencies. The authors commence by reiterating, quote, the Federal Reserve is considering how a CBDC might fit into the US money and payments landscape. A crucial test for a potential CBDC is whether it would prove superior to other methods that might address issues of concern outlined in this paper. The authors then explain that a digital dollar would be the safest form of money because it's held at and issued by the Federal Reserve, and they explain the 4 features a digital dollar must have, and again, this is very debatable. In any case, the first feature is privacy, or rather, privacy. Now, I use finger quotes because, quote, any CBDC would need to strike an appropriate balance, however, between safeguarding the privacy rights of consumers and affording the transparency necessary to deter criminal activity. The second feature is intermediated, meaning that the big banks would provide the infrastructure, including accounts and digital wallets. This is not because the Fed wants them to, but because the Fed doesn't have the capacity to provide these things without their help, something that Jerome admitted during that aforementioned hearing. The third feature is transferability, meaning that a CBDC could be seamlessly transferred between all intermediaries in the economy. This reminds me of something that's been mentioned in many CBDC reports, and that's that the current infrastructure couldn't support this degree of transferability, even in developed countries. The fourth and final feature is identity verification, meaning that the intermediaries would need to complete extensive KYC on anyone using a CBDC, thereby killing any prospect of privacy. And of course, the authors note that, quote, governments could use a CBDC to collect taxes or make benefit payments directly to citizens. Additionally, a CBDC could potentially be programmed to, for example, deliver payments at certain times. The authors then pivot to the potential benefits of a digital dollar, and they identify 5. The first is safety and efficiency. The second is improved cross-border payments. The third is the preservation of the US dollar status as the world's reserve currency. The fourth is financial inclusion. And the fifth is basically all the above. What's nice is that the authors emphasize, quote, the Federal Reserve is committed to ensuring the continued safety and availability of cash and is considering a CBDC as a means to expound safe payment options, not to reduce or replace them. Even so, there's no guarantee that anyone who still uses cash won't be labelled a risk in the future, thanks to the FATF's recommendations. More about that in the description. When it comes to the possible risks associated with a CBDC, the authors also identify 5. The first is that people could start holding digital dollars instead of other safe haven assets, such as government bonds, because a CBDC would be safer. The authors float a remedy that's worse than the risk, and that's to limit the amount of digital dollars a person could hold or transfer at a given time. The second risk relates to the first, and that's that people might dump all other assets and turn to digital dollars during a stock market crash, which would make the crash even worse. The authors again suggest that this risk could be mitigated by manipulating the amount of digital dollars an individual or institution can hold during a stock market crash. In other words, you can just make it impossible for people to sell their assets. The third risk revolves around interest rates, and the TLDR here is that digital dollars could increase interest rates, which would make it very expensive to borrow. This is something else that's been mentioned in other CBDC reports, and the implication for the average person is that they may not be able to afford to take the loan they need to buy a car or a home. As for the big banks, the market dynamics created by CBDCs would likely make it very difficult for them to stay profitable, which is why Wall Street isn't a fan of the digital dollar either. The fourth risk pertains to privacy, and the authors acknowledge that it's going to be very difficult to find the balance between protecting privacy and preventing illicit activity. The fifth risk is cybersecurity, and it boggles my mind that the authors didn't bother to mention quantum computing. What they did say, though, is, quote, designing appropriate defenses for CBDC could be particularly difficult because a CBDC network could potentially have more entry points than existing payment services. This is pretty concerning, and it might be why some countries are looking to leverage cryptocurrencies to issue their CBDCs. You can find out which ones they're interested in by using the link in the description. The report concludes by touching on the Federal Reserve's future digital dollar plans and breaking down the questions it has for the public about its digital dollar. The authors open with, quote, the Federal Reserve would only pursue a CBDC in the context of broad public and cross-governmental support. The authors then unpack their questions, and I'll answer a few of them here for your viewing pleasure. I'll also leave a link to the comment form in the description if you're a vocal US citizen. Question 1. What additional potential benefits, policy considerations, or risks of a CBDC may exist that have not been raised in this paper? Oh, I don't know. Maybe the possibility that this technology could be used for much more than monetary policy if it falls into the wrong hands? Question 2. Could some or all the potential benefits of a CBDC be better achieved in a different way? Yes, decentralized stablecoins. Question 11. Are there additional ways to manage potential risks associated with CBDC that were not raised in this paper? Yes, use cryptocurrency instead. Question 16. Should the amount of CBDC held by a single end user be subject to quantity limits? Hell no. Question 18. Should a CBDC have offline capabilities? If so, how might this be achieved? It's called cash. Question 20. How could a CBDC be designed to achieve transferability across multiple payment platforms? There's a cryptocurrency called Cosmos, and you can learn about it using the link in the description. Question 22. Are there trade-offs around any of the identified design principles, especially in trying to achieve the potential benefits of a CBDC? Yes, privacy in finance is paramount because without it, people can and arguably will be coerced, oppressed, or excluded based on their being or beliefs. Not only that, but apparently none of these anti-money laundering laws have had any meaningful effect on preventing money laundering. Now, unfortunately, it seems the authors also forgot to pose an important question, so I'll ask it here. Do you even want a digital dollar? Answer: no. Nobody asked for this, no rational person wants it except for the few powerful people at the top, and the only way central banks will succeed in implementing it is to force people to use it. Either that or devalue existing fiat currencies to the point that they're worthless and present CBDCs as the only alternative. On that note, if you want to learn about just how bad inflation really is, you can find out using the link in the description. And now for the most important question of them all. What could a digital dollar mean for the crypto market? Well, I'll start by reiterating that there are some cryptocurrencies that could stand to benefit from CBDCs, and the one that comes to mind here is Algorand. According to Appendix A of the Federal Reserve's report, quote, "The Federal Reserve Bank of Boston is collaborating with the Massachusetts Institute of Technology's Digital Currency Initiative to explore the development of alternative platforms." As many of you will know, Algorand founder Silvio Micali is an MIT professor and also happens to be a part of MIT's Digital Currency Initiative. What's more is that a CBDC report by PricewaterhouseCoopers from last April specifies that the United States will be working on quantum-resistant security for its CBDC in 2022. Can you guess which cryptocurrency is also expected to roll out its own quantum-resistant security features this year? That's right, Algorand. Now, speculation aside, it sounds like a digital dollar wouldn't be the disaster scenario that many have made it out to be, at least in terms of the crypto market. In addition to saying that cryptocurrencies aren't a threat to financial stability, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell said that CBDCs and stablecoins could coexist. The Fed's own report also specifies that it's not looking to compete with other forms of money within the economy, never mind the fact that the current Fed board members aren't exactly in favor of the digital dollar to begin with. The thing is that 3 Fed additional board members were recently nominated, and they all seem to be anti-crypto and supportive of a CBDC, be it because they want the United States to compete with China or because they want to use the Fed's financial controls to fight climate change. It should come as no surprise then that Jerome and his current constituents appear to oppose a digital dollar because they worry it would be used for purposes other than the Fed's mandate of keeping inflation under control in the future, a concern that's shared by many US politicians as well. As the Fed has repeated many times, however, it's ultimately up to the politicians to approve a CBDC, and it looks like they're not too keen on doing so. Call me crazy, but this might have something to do with the fact that as a digital dollar is extremely unpopular with individuals and institutions, any politician who pushes for it is almost guaranteed to get voted out. As far as I'm concerned, on the off chance that the digital dollar does get the green light, cryptocurrency will become more valuable than ever. If you're curious about what the worst case for crypto really is, though, you can find out by watching my video about that. Yep, down in the description. And that's it for today's video about the Federal Reserve's CBDC report. If you learned something new, let me know by smashing that like button. If you plan on coming back, subscribe to the channel and ping that notification bell too. If you've already watched every video on this channel, check out Coin Bureau clips to get more Coin Bureau content. I'm also active on Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram, and push daily crypto updates on Telegram. If you're wondering what cryptos I hold as part of my personal portfolio and which ones I'll be covering next, you can get all that info and more by subscribing to my weekly newsletter. And if you want to look cool while doing all of the above, head on over to the Coin Bureau merch store and snag some crypto swag. Links to all these resources and more are waiting for you down below. Thank you all for watching. Remember to drink lots of water, get plenty of sleep, and stay awesome. That's an order.